What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Kika Podcast brought to you by the Kika Labs. As always, live from the city of Oceanside. I am Victor V. I'm here with my boy Louis Lope. Of course, we got Bruce on the side.
Yep.
And this episode is brought to you by the production of Mr. Piccolo out in the backside of the controls. But we do have a very, very special guest that having to stop by and kick it with us here at the studio. We got Joshua Rains, Deputy District Attorney, hanging out with us. Josh, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. And it's a pleasure to meet all of you and, giving me a spot on the show to just talk about, whatever you guys want to discuss. And just a little correction. I was a deputy district attorney for 2.5 years.
Okay.
And now I'm a employment defense attorney. So I defend like the small businesses and stuff like that.
Okay.
So,
nice.
Yeah.
All right. So would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, and most importantly, I'm an Oceanside resident. So we can all, enjoy beautiful Oceanside. So a little bit about me. I got 2 kids. Daniel is 18, just turned 18 in December. And then I have Alicia is 14. And then I have a wife at home. Her name is Angie. And so we've been living in Oceanside since 2018. And then we first moved to North County in 2011. I currently, like I said, I'm an employment attorney, employment defense, and that basically means you just defend the local business owners from whatever lawsuits they may encounter and stuff like that. And on the side, I'm also a basically Air Force JAG Reserve officer. And so in that capacity, I'm an attorney for the Air Force. And I do a lot of criminal prosecution on base as far as military members and stuff like that. So I can still fulfill a lot of my criminal law stuff through the Air Force. So I think I start orders. My base is in New Jersey, so I do a little bit of traveling.
Okay.
And I think I go out there next month, or actually the end of this month and all of April, and then I'll be back in May. So it's kind of one of those things I kind of just hop in and out and do courts and be an attorney for a little while, and then I come back to beautiful San Diego, specifically Oceanside. And then let's see, what else do I do to keep myself busy? I consult a lot of other attorneys when it comes to like criminal law and stuff like that. I have several friends from law school that have their own practices, and they're not really attuned with like the criminal world. So if they get a criminal client, they'll call me up and say, "Josh, what do I do?" And I kind of just walk them through how best to defend their client, and if they have any cases or issues and stuff like that. I also have a local public relations firm that I manage with another partner of mine. And basically it's just we take like local candidates that run for like city council, school board, supervisor, stuff like that. And we take them from Joe Schmo citizen that know nothing to elected representative.
And that's here in the city of Oceanside?
It could be in Oceanside. We work with anybody in San Diego, really. So most of our candidates are from North County. Rebecca Jones for San Marcos mayor was one of our candidates last cycle. Joe Garcia, he's a Latino pastor from Escondido. He was one of our clients, a super cool guy. And then, so just to name a few. And so we kind of just do that. We don't really make a lot of money doing it. It's just more of like a community service type thing. Like we make a little bit of money to, keep the wives happy.
Right.
We're awake.
We're working. This is the reason why.
Yeah, exactly. Just keep them happy. But honestly, we just do it because we're passionate about it. We're passionate about our community. We're passionate about politics and stuff like that. So I do that in my spare time, and that's more of a cyclical thing because obviously elections aren't all the time. So it's every 2 years, and keeps us busy on the election year. So now that we just finished an election, I have a little bit more time to do other endeavors.
Yeah, that was just this past year, right? 2022, where we had a quick little run in a couple of different vacant chairs.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and then there's usually elections. No matter where on the ballot, up and down the ballot, from president to governor, every 2 years, you'll find something going on. And that's not counting like the special elections or any type of weird elections that kind of come up. Yeah. And then let's see, I have my own real estate investment business that I run, both for my family and myself. That keeps me pretty busy. Most of the time it's on autopilot, but there are times that requires a lot of attention. And let's see, what else do I do to keep myself busy? I was a foundation board member for Guajome High School. It's a charter school in Vista.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
So I did that for several years. My son goes to Guajome. He's graduating in a couple months now. And then I just recently served on the Oceanside Planning Commission. And I had to unfortunately step away from that because my military duty was just taking up too much time. But got a lot of experience, like with development and projects and really cool things going on in the city. And yeah, that's let's see what else about me. I'm a California native, so originally from the Bay Area.
Oh,
So and then joined the Air Force originally out of high school just after 9/11. And then got shipped all over the world, landed in Las Vegas for 4 years, did a tour over in the Middle East during Operation Iraqi Freedom, and then got out of the Air Force, went reserve for a couple years, went to University of Colorado for my undergrad, and then of course always wanted to come back to California because how can you beat California, right?
It's pretty hard, man.
It's really hard. There's really cool places out there, but yeah, nobody beats California.
No, I 100% agree. I think we can all be friends. Like if I heard that. But yeah, so I mean, I was stuck in Colorado for a while. That's during like the 2008 economic downturn. Like everybody stopped hiring. It was kind of hard to get a job. So kind of got stuck there a little bit. Originally never wanted to be an attorney, actually. Actually wanted to just be involved in law enforcement and this kind of thing. And unfortunately, like during that 2008 crisis, that's when, all the police departments around the country just stopped hiring because there was no budget or anything because of the economic stuff. And so I had to kind of seek other options. So I was working part-time going undergrad for a bank, U.S. bank, and kind of just decided to stick with that and get some financial background. So I ended up doing that for about 7 years. And then I finally had enough of corporate America, I guess you could say, and decided, you know what, I need to do something else. So had a lot of friends and family kind of encourage me, say, hey, Josh, so have you thought about law school? And I'm like, guys, like I don't have the money to go to law school. Like, I kind of grew up kind of lower middle class, like didn't really have a lot of money. And then I found a way because I was a veteran, the Air Force would actually pay for it. And so I was like, okay, well, let's give it a shot. And the first semester law school, I did okay, and I didn't blow anything out of the water. Got to my second semester law school, and I was like, I don't know if this is really for me. Like, I just don't know, right? And then I started doing like more of the oral advocacy stuff, like courtroom presentations, this kind of thing. And I found I really enjoyed that. It was like I didn't really like the typing and like the stuff that most lawyers, like 90% of lawyers do, like, the book stuff or like the writing stuff. I really excel like doing stuff in the courtroom where I can be more, like
a little bit more vocal, more involved.
Yeah. More, interaction with people and stuff like that. I did really well with that. And in fact, so well, I started winning awards and they're like, oh yeah, this is great. And so I'm thinking like, well, maybe this is for me then, so that's kind of where I kind of landed as far as law school goes. Of course, with my criminal or, not criminal, but law enforcement background, criminal law, eventually, that's kind of what steered me toward like the prosecution route. And so I ended up being a criminal prosecutor, prosecuted misdemeanor and felony crimes, working with like victims of either like domestic violence or a lot of victims of like stalking and stuff like that. And so it felt really fulfilling to kind of be able to protect victims in that way and kind of just do, good service for the community. And so then, like I mentioned, I was on the Oceanside Planning Commission, and, that was a huge learning experience, learning about different projects Oceanside's have it coming up and different, different developments that we have in the works. It was really special. So,
yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what really is like the Oceanside Planning Commission?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. For those that don't know, so a lot of people, they just kind of take city government for granted, right? And they don't realize that, like, all those people, no matter who they, the Mayor Sanchez or my council member Ryan Keim, there's really just part-time employees, right? They get like $25,000 a year to do 2 months, not 2 months, but like 2 meetings a month.
That is true, though.
And it is really a full-time job, like representing the city and getting out there and really like, developing relationships with the community.
Yeah.
Right. And they don't really, they're getting part-time salary for full-time pay. Right. But, with that in mind, like unlike Congress, which is like, in DC where it's full-time, you're there all the time, you're on different committees. We can't ask our city council members or mayors to be on all these committees. They do stuff like with Sandag. I don't know if you guys know what that is. Or like, the North County Transit District. They have a lot of committees they have to be on. Right. But there's a lot of other committees that are kind of left like with no one to do anything with. So that would be like your police and fire commission, or you would be like your planning commission. There are these sub commissions that are really left vacant because we don't have the full-time legislators at the city level to fill them, right? So that's when normal citizens, like anybody in Oceanside or whatever city you belong to, can apply to, hey, I want to be on this commission and serve my community, right? And kind of take the burden off of the council. And what you do is that's really a lot of where the city work happens, right? Is you're representing, the constituents in the city because you're a resident yourself. And, these developers that have, let's say, they bought a 20-acre plot of land, they want to put a new Walmart in, or, like the CarMax that they're putting in over on in South Oceanside that they just opened.
Yeah, it opened up
Yep.
next to the DMV.
Yeah, exactly. So that was one of the projects we approved. But the people who represent CarMax, their attorneys, the developers, they all have to come before the commission. The commission can consist of 6 to 8 people, and they're all, like I said, just regular civilians of the city. And they say, hey, this is our plan. This is what we want to do. Like, what do you guys think? And they have to get our input, right? And then they have an open meeting, and this takes several hours, right? Because you have a lot of not just that project. There's maybe 2 or 3 projects you have to kind of talk about that evening. And just like the city council, it's twice a month. It's like a couple hours out of your evening on like a Tuesday or Wednesday or whenever we can schedule them. And, that's kind of part of the community input. And then we approve it, and it goes to the city council, and they see our recommendation. So kind of, they don't have to do that work, right? So they can say, okay, planning commission already reviewed it. We feel pretty confident. Or if they have additional questions, they can shoot it back to us and say, hey, like, did you guys address this, this, and this? Like, oh, no, we forgot. Like, let's address that. And then we have another hearing and so on and so forth. But that's really what the Oceanside Planning Commission is, or any commission, really. The Police and Fire Commission, and, they kind of deal with the public safety, the police department, like, what policies do we have? What can we do to make it better? What can we do to change? Stuff like that. So it's very important. So I would encourage any of your listeners to have any interest in like community service. That's a really great way to serve.
And is there like a certain way for them to be able to reach out to these commissions? Is there like a certain page, or does each commission have like its own individual?
Yeah, it's through the city website. So if you just literally Google Oceanside Commission, boards and commissions, should take you right to the page. There's like an art commission. There's a beach commission. There's a commission for everything. Any of your
just gives you just like a different branch.
Yeah,
like different things to do.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Nice.
So it's super cool. A good way to serve the community. So.
And there was something you were saying earlier about you also help during election times, I believe, or right before election times, with helping them turn from Joe Schmo into like more of a politician style thing. How do you guys go about doing that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, let me give you a little bit of a backstory. So,
Ooh.
so my major in undergrad was actually political science, right? And so a little bit before that, like I hadn't really decided on a major. I was going to community college. Air Force is paying for it, so I'm just taking class. Kind of the general ed classes you have to take, right? And I kept hearing from all my peers in community college. They're like, oh, there's this class called political science. The teacher's awful. The class is just super hard. Like it's very difficult. Like in these, like they're my math classes or like my Spanish classes, these kids are pretty smart. Like I never really considered myself really a brainiac or anything, but they would constantly get B's or A's in other classes, but they get C's or D's in this political science class. And I'm like, oh great. Like I don't want to take this class.
Yeah. You just feel like the joint failure. You're just like, ooh, I don't know about that, man.
Yeah, but unfortunately you have to take it, right? In order to get, to progress to the next level. So I was like, I saved it to last. I was like, I'm dreading this. So I take the class, and I get the book, and I'm kind of reading the book, and it's just basic, U.S. government. It's like, here's what the president does, here's what Congress is, here's the Supreme Court, and like this and that, a little bit of history mixed in. And I was like, well, this is pretty simple. And I always had like an interest in politics. It was not a foreign concept for me. So I like took the class, and I'm like, we're doing a little bit of like the Roman history and how that intermixes with U.S. history and stuff like that. And I'm like, this doesn't really seem that difficult. Like, maybe I just haven't got to the hard part yet. I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop. We got all the way through the semester. I ended up getting an A in the class.
It was like
easy A. Okay, let's go.
Damn.
So I literally went up to, I remember this like clear as day. I went up to the professor afterwards, and I was one of his top students, so he knew who I was. And I was like, hey, professor, like, is this, this class, I really enjoyed it, and I did fairly well. And I said, is this can you major in this? And he's like, yeah, it's called political science. That's what I have my major in. I was like, sign me up. This is great. So that's what I ended up getting my major, and I went to applied to University of Colorado, got in, started taking my core classes. And this is, of course, during like 2007, 2008, when the presidential election is kind of ramping up, right? And we have, Hillary Clinton going up against Barack Obama, and, they're duking it out. And like Colorado is on the list of states that are going to be voting early, and it's all exciting. And all of my professors, who were, seasoned political, professors of political science, basically. They were also like moonlighting or, working part-time for the Obama campaign. Right. And they had a lot of like great ideas and strategies. And like, I'm like processing all this stuff. And I'm like, these are really great ideas. Like, we're not talking about politics. I'm talking about like the strategy for campaigning, like reaching out to voters, like voter contact, this kind of thing. Right.
New ways to contact, getting people involved as opposed to like
just running the whole PR campaign.
Actually like very intense, like chess kind of strategy. I was very impressed. So, I started volunteering on campaigns, like kind of getting my feet wet, like this kind of thing. And, I kind of got a knack for it. I volunteered to be like a treasurer on a race. I didn't really like the money stuff, but even though I work at a bank, right. But, I started getting into more of the strategy and like the voter contact and like the analytics and statistics of it. Like the polling data, that kind of thing. And I was like, I think maybe I could just do this myself, so let me just try. So sure enough, like, I started like, just meeting people that really can't afford like a full-time political consultant because they're running for school board or they're running for, city council, right? It's like, these are not highly paid positions and they're not really like, people are going to spend a lot of money doing that. They're not going to raise a lot of money. And, to hire a professional political consultant like you would do, like, this season coming up, like Joe Biden's probably going to spend a lot of money. I don't know what Trump's going to spend, but if any of the Republicans are probably going to hire very, very seasoned, political operatives, right? They know what they're doing because, it takes a lot to run for Congress or Senate or the president, right? And the little city council people can't afford it. So, I would just, hey, give me like $100 a month or whatever you can afford to work it into the budget. Just so I can, like I said, I can justify to the wife why I'm staying late at night or whatever. And so that's what I started doing. And what it is honestly, it's just, obviously experience, right? And so there's like a whole like survey I give the new candidates. Okay, like, first off, like, why do you want to run? Right. Because you have to, if you can't convince me why I should work for you, you're not convincing any voters to vote for you. Right. So really, that's where it starts. It starts like, okay, why do you want to run? Right. Like, what do you want to fix? Like, what's the problem? Oh, I want, this, and this. And usually like they have 10,000 ideas. We have to narrow that down to really 3.
Right. You got to have like the main, the main points that you're trying to get people to vote on. Like, okay, once you vote for me, and these are the main things I will be concentrating on.
Yeah, exactly. Because, a lot of people, and, the best way to voter contact is going door to door, right? And you're talking to people, especially in the political realm. Like, we have to understand the people who deal in politics all the time, like myself, we're not normal. Right. So normal people don't want to talk politics all the time. Right.
They get all offended. Like, oh,
it's not even offensive. It's just like people just the election's done. I'm done thinking about it for 2 years, or even for some people 4 years, because some people only vote in the presidential election.
Yeah, for the most part, I think that's like the most common time.
Yeah. So, normally like my wife is a perfect example, doesn't care about politics at all. Right. So she wants to go home and watch like Below Deck or, some kind of like reality show. She's not going to want to have anyone knock on the door. Hey, I'm running for office. She's like, I don't care.
How about you just run away from this door, man?
Oh, man. Yeah. So, that's the other challenge is like, you have these candidates that really are passionate about their community. They want to do a good job. They want to like, like our current city councilor, mayor, they have the passion for it. They want to do the service. But you got to be able to like fit that passion into like 30 seconds because that's all the time you're going to really have talking to voters at the door. So usually what I do is to kind of narrow down their big ideas is whatever office they're running for. And usually, it's either school board or city council. I'll say, hey, like whatever school district you're running for, or whatever city you're running for, you need to go download the city budget for the past 2 or 3 years. You need to read through it, right? Or the school district, look at the budget. What are they spending money on, right? Because that's the issues you're going to have a direct control over, right? So for example, a lot of people don't realize that, right, if you run for city council, you're really not going to have anything to do with education at all. because you have an independent school board that deals exclusively with education.
with
Yep.
the school stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of people don't know that, and they're like, they come to me and they're like, Josh, I want to police funding. Let's say like we need to reform the police department, and we need to like help our schools. I'm like, whoa. We're going to calm that down. Like we're gonna have to splice that apart a bit. But usually after they read the budget, they have a more solid understanding of, okay, I'm only going to deal with like potholes and police funding or whatever else the city, beach erosion, this kind of thing. Or like planning development, this kind of thing. Like where's the next housing development going to go? Where's the next Costco gonna be built? That kind of stuff you're going to have a direct impact on. And so we just getting them to understand that's really like half the battle. Getting their message down to like a 30-second chunk is the next, and then just getting them out there to work, to really focus their energy on contacting the right voters. And what I mean by that's more of the strategy piece that I talk about. And how I explain it to people is this, is like, you see a lot of candidates that don't hire the right consultants or don't hire consultants at all. You'll probably see them out on the street corner, right? Like waving a sign, right? And that's typical, right?
Yeah.
I absolutely forbid my candidates to do that.
No, dude, honestly, like to me personally,
I agree.
I find that annoying, man. If I see people out there like holding signs and stuff, I'm just like, I don't want to vote for that person.
I'm gonna be like best of luck to you. God bless your heart.
Get my vote on Facebook. But that's really noble of you, Josh, to be able to bring in these up and coming candidates that are really just brand new into the circuit and don't know exactly what they're doing. Because we've had a few that have come by through the podcast, and we've spoken to them about how it is to run a campaign. And for a first timer, it is challenging.
Yeah, we've had a couple people that through the podcast trying to run for mayor or school board, etc., city council.
Yeah,
and one of that sticks out with me is it Fernando Garcia? Was that his name?
I believe so.
He was running for mayor during the.
I know exactly who you're talking about, but I don't know if that's the correct name.
Right,
though,
I don't
but
remember.
yes.
I'm gonna look it up, but I think that was his name. He was running for mayor of Oceanside as well. It was when Christopher Rodriguez was running. Ms. Esther Sanchez, and he was telling me because he was just a normal guy. I think he was also a former military, and he was saying that he was going through all those paperwork and all that stuff. It's like, dude, they make it so confusing for like for the average person to be able to understand what's going on.
Oh yeah, it's very true. I mean, like just the financial reporting requirements alone. I don't deal with that. Like I said, I tried doing the treasury thing once. I hated it, because a lot of it has to do with the fact that like I'm pretty good with money generally, but I was working at a bank at the time. So I was dealing with money all day.
You're just over it, man. I'm tired of looking at these numbers, man.
Yes, I don't want to do money at nighttime when it's like, I have dreams about money. So yeah, but like just the financial reporting requirements alone, number one, are super important. It's extremely tedious. And number three, it can get you in the most trouble.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Duncan Hunter. I mean, he ended up getting federally prosecuted. He was a former congressman from East County. Because he messed up, and it wasn't just that he made a mistake. It was a lot of bad faith kind of stuff going on, at least according to the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Underhanded type of things.
Like purchasing, GameStop stuff with campaign funds, this type of thing. That's like a big no-no, right? And so, that's like one example, but there's tons of examples of people just getting into huge trouble because they didn't hire the right accountant, or they're just very, willy-nilly with the campaign funds, which you can't be. And so that, I always advise my clients, here's a list, pick one. We've worked with them in the past, but, make sure that's squared away. And then, everything else kind of just falls into place. But yeah, it definitely is not the easiest thing to do.
Is it safe to say that the song Money by Pink Floyd is not one of your favorites?
Well,
That's a great song.
It depends on the context. If we're talking about my money, then
Zinger. That was a good one.
So let's go back to more of the attorney side of things. A lot of people out here don't have a basic understanding of how the law works. What are some of the things that you could advise people on how to go about it if they find themselves in that situation?
Sure. I mean, the biggest advice that I constantly tell people is unless you're reporting a crime, there's no need to talk to the cops. All right. And this is coming from a, seasoned criminal prosecutor and a current Air Force prosecutor. Right. And I'm telling you, like, that's where a majority, not even a majority, I would say 75% of our cases, I just go to the police report where the defendant or the suspect starts talking. And then the case is done, right? Because they admit everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And because they always try to think they can either outsmart the cops, which you can't. The cops do this professionally all the time. They're going to trip you up. That's their job, right? And we're talking everything from a very complex investigation to just a simple traffic stop, right? And I haven't been put in this position because obviously I don't drink and drive. But for those that do have a couple glasses of wine or something like that and want to drive home, it's perfectly fine. Know your limits, obviously. But if you get pulled over, they're going to ask you, have you been drinking? You're not required to answer that, right? And like usually what I've told all my kids and what I tell my friends and any people who ask me for advice, you want to be very respectful to the police, but uncooperative, right? I mean, you just be very, I apologize, sir. I'm not going to answer that question, right? He's very respectful, but you're not cooperating with his, and he's investigating, right? He's trying to figure out if you're committing a crime, i.e. drinking and driving, for example. Right. And so any of the tests they want you to do, you don't have to do any of those. Right. Until they actually place you in handcuffs, like you're being arrested, and they make you for a DUI. And they make you actually, like, say, do you want to do like the breath test or the blood test? You have to do one of those. I mean, technically, you don't have to. I mean, you're just risking your license being suspended for a year. Right. They're going to get a warrant, and they're going to get one of them regardless. So at that point, you do have to make a decision. But up until they put you in handcuffs or tell you you're under arrest, you don't have to answer any questions. You don't have to do any of the walk and turn nonsense, none of that stuff. And a lot of people don't know that. And I think that's very important because a lot of people just, they want to go along with the program or don't know the rights, unfortunately. And I've had many cases where I've actually, on the prosecution side, I've been rooting for the actual defendant. Because I'm like reading it, like, for example, this last summer I was doing criminal prosecution in New Jersey for the Air Force, and we're dealing with a case that had to do with sexual assault. And the victim story was a little wish-washy, and I'm a very pro-victim type person, obviously, because I'm a criminal prosecutor, so I'm very victim-minded. But her story just didn't add up to me. If it's not adding up to me, it's not going to add up to the jury, right? If we had to end up going to trial. And so I was kind of questioning her story. And then, I saw the interview of the defendant, and we call him accused in the Air Force, but same difference. And, I believed the kid, this 21-year-old kid met this girl on Tinder, things happen, right? But his version of the story sounded much more plausible. And, and he didn't come across as, he was lying or being insincere. But they got to the point where the investigators are reading him his rights. And you can tell he kind of like plays with the idea of getting an attorney, because like, do you want an attorney where, we can provide you one, or we'll stop questioning. And he kind of like flirts around with the issue. And I'll get to my second point here. This is very important. He's like, well, do you think I need an attorney? And of course, what are they going to say? They're like, oh, we can't tell you whether you need an attorney or not, blah, blah, blah. And they can't. But they're not going to say yes or no, right? They're hoping that he just talked. Yeah. And so he, I was like this moment in the video where I'm thinking to myself, ask for an attorney. Come on, kid, you're almost there. You're almost there. You're like right there. And he didn't end up asking for an attorney. He ended up explaining. But I think in this rare circumstance, it actually helped him because, like, for example, in this situation, I got to review the case, and I ended up believing his story. Right. So I got to hear his side of events, and it seemed, like I said, seemed more plausible. Right. So I ended up getting the case dismissed and thrown out, which is, that's just. But anyway, so that leads my second point. A lot of people don't know is you have to use the exact words. I want a lawyer or I want an attorney, period. That's it. You can't beat around the bush and say, maybe I should get an attorney, or maybe, I think I should talk to an attorney. None of that's going to work. So this stems from an actual court case in which it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, in which of course, we're reading court transcripts here, right? And so on the paper, he told the detectives that he wants an attorney dog. Right. Wait, what? So what he said was, word for word, I want an attorney dog. Right. And it read like that. D-O-G is what it
but he probably meant D-A-W-G. Like,
correct.
An attorney, dog.
Like, that's exactly what it was. Right?
Okay.
And so the police caught on that. And very intuitively said, well, we don't provide attorney dogs. Right?
Oh my God.
And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that like, no, he didn't invoke his right. He didn't say it correctly. He should have just said, I want an attorney.
Really?
Yeah. And so that his case got tossed, and he ended up having to sort of spend prison time.
Oh
Wow.
So a lot of it is really like very direct and like, all right, well, you said it like this, and that's how we're gonna interpret it.
And that's what the Supreme Court is for, is to interpret and apply the law correctly. And that's what they did in such a small way of God dang, what would you call that?
Wow. It's very precise.
Yeah.
You can't call any police officer dog because it doesn't fly. Okay.
What about the canine unit?
Take some notes, everybody.
Now I hope at some point we do have an attorney dog. Instead of saying objection, you hear the
that would stand for recess. Let's go play ball, boy.
That's a great cartoon episode right there.
But you were saying ask for a lawyer or an attorney. Is there a difference between both? Or is it just kind of like a synonym?
It's a synonym, really. I mean, people try to make the distinction that like a lawyer is somebody who's like authorized to practice law. Attorney is like somebody who's passed the bar. I might have gotten the two switched also, but somebody who has passed the bar and was waiting results or hasn't been sworn in yet or something like that. So there's like a very little distinction, but they're pretty much synonymous. So.
Okay, gotcha.
And speaking about the bar exam, for California, how many times did you have to take it? Just once?
Thankfully, I passed my first time.
There you go. Because I always hear some side stories with lawyers, like they're saying, like, yeah, dude, the second time or third time,
I know some people that took it 4 times. So
wow.
What's your take on it, on the bar exam?
It's a ridiculously hard test, and I don't know whether it actually makes you a better attorney. I would err on the side that it doesn't. It really doesn't deal with like really legal issues. It's more of just memorization and like being able to like, who can memorize the most stuff kind of thing and who can type it faster. That's really all it is. It's not a like kind of a medium of who is a good attorney, who's not. It does filter out people that aren't really, I guess, committed in the way. I do agree with the, it's a slog, and it takes a lot of motivation and a lot of preparation, a lot of memorization. Excuse me. And so, it really filters out the people that really are not dedicated and that don't want to put in the time and effort to really pass the test. I went into it thinking like, this is my entire existence. I'm not going into that test ill prepared. And I still went in feeling like I was going to get slaughtered, right? You can't ever feel good about the test.
Butterflies in the stomach and everything.
That and much more. It was funny because like when we're in, there's like the written portion, which you kind of knock out. I felt okay about that. I didn't feel great. I didn't feel like I bombed anything. And then really what separates the men from the boys or the women from the girls is the multiple choice section, at least in my opinion. And that's where like, you have like 2 or 3, different answers that could be, and you have to kind of eliminate in your head and quickly because you're on a time limit of which answer it could be, and there's 2 different sections of that test. And so you take the first section because it's 2 days. So the first day is all typing as fast as you can, your fingers hurt afterward. And then the second day is, in the morning, you had to take like the first part of the multiple choice. And then the afternoon is the second part of multiple choice. Yeah. So not everybody takes the same section. Like, sometimes there's like a harder section. There's like a regular, like a medium section. So I got I was one of my only people in my friends group that got like the super hard section first. And these questions were nothing like I practiced for. They just completely.
That sounds like every test out there, man.
Yeah.
Changed it up, Banyas.
Yeah. And I'm like thinking, I failed every question. I walked to lunch. We were at the hotel downtown San Diego. I walked out. We were at the Marriott. I walked out in the pool area. I felt sick. I was like, I failed. And everyone else was like, oh, that wasn't that bad. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? So it was funny because I was thinking like, oh, well, everyone else seems to be just fine with the test. And I'm like, maybe I just didn't study that. I was feeling really defeated. Mm-hmm. So then I got the second portion, and that was more of like what I was expecting. It was definitely harder, but it was like more in line with what I was anticipating. I was like, oh, great. So then it was funny because then I felt a little bit better, right? Didn't feel great, but I didn't feel like I was going to puke anymore. So then we got done with the day. And then all my friends had the exact same feeling that I had at lunch. They all felt sick,
the
and
second
I'm like,
time.
ha ha ha. Like, so I kind of got the last laugh. But
There you go.
but it is definitely a difficult test, and it's not for the faint of heart, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you could disclose it, but what was probably like the most difficult question you found on that
Yeah,
test?
it's
Yeah,
not.
that's a good one.
It's not necessarily disclosing; it's being able to remember.
Because
But-
once you get it done, you're done with
Yeah,
it, right?
You're like, it's over. Just
You just mind dump it. But I mean, there were a couple questions that really kind of out of left field, like the stuff that we didn't even cover. Like there was tribal land law that deals with Indian reservations and stuff like that. And I'm like, what is this question doing? We didn't know this was never even discussed in law school, let alone bar prep. And so it was a question like that. There's a couple other weird questions, like maybe I think there was one that had to deal with a maritime law, has to do with U.S. Coast Guard, in the high seas. And I'm like, this has to be some kind of, because sometimes they do put test questions in there. And I was like, this has to be one of them.
The questions that don't even matter, but
Correct.
they're just in the test.
Yeah.
you're just like, yeah, let's mess around with this guy's percentages right now.
So it's basically crash test dummy questions.
But it's good info to know, though.
Yeah.
So it's probably those ones, just because they caught me so off guard. And of course they left a lasting impression because I was totally unprepared for those type of things. But as far as the subjects, all the subjects I had studied for pretty well. The one I studied for the least was probably, we had a contracts question. So I was probably least prepared for that, on the essay portion. But I passed. So that's all that matters.
Oh yeah, man, it's good to hear. We do actually have a couple comments on the Instagram and on YouTube. We have all
God,
the... Yeah, no, we get pretty raunchy in this podcast. Alutor saying light the blunt.
We do not have any on the table today.
I am
Sorry, we're on good behavior today.
I'm kicking it way.
Just straight
Read
kick.
the shirt.
But thank you, Aldo.
Yeah, and then we have Osai saying, "What are some myths for marijuana that people believe are laws, or vice versa?"
There's a lot of myths out there, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the myths, but I can cover some of the laws that I know about.
Okay.
For example, I don't believe you're allowed to do it in public. I think it's actually just public. You're not allowed to just smoke anywhere you want.
Yeah, similar
Exactly.
to drinking.
Right. So you got to be careful with that. It's not probably enforced a lot, I don't think, because obviously I smell it a lot. But that's something to be aware of that you can be probably ticketed for if somebody complains or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I think as California is concerned, it's 6 plants. I think you guys probably know more than me. I think you can legally have 6 plants in your backyard without raising a fuss. I think anything more than that, you could probably skim the lines a little bit without having to worry about getting ticketed. But if you start getting into the hundreds of plants, it probably creates.
Oh yeah, then now it's
Yeah,
a problem.
now you need a commercial license.
There's no way
that.
that's all for
other
personal
stuff.
use.
Yeah.
It's
So,
oh boy, I see a big old tax.
but yeah, and then just important to keep in mind, for example, I am not actually able to do any marijuana products or marijuana in general because I'm a federal employee and it's still illegal federally. So it's important to keep that in mind. For example, if people go on base, for example, those are federal installations, you can be cited and even arrested for having any amount of marijuana. And I don't want to speak on the actual intoxication level, but any possession of marijuana is strictly illegal on federal installations. So if you have to go on Camp Pendleton for any reason, and they can search your car for, a multitude of reasons. If you get caught, you're going to get cited and you have to go to federal court. So, and that is pretty hefty fine. So just to keep in mind.
There you go.
Interesting.
Take some notes right here from Josh. If you go to anywhere in San Diego where it has to be a military base, make sure you leave your stuff at home.
Don't worry.
Do you ever think it will be legal at the federal level?
I think we are headed that direction, honestly. And honestly, it would make our lives as far as the Air Force goes, a lot simpler because a lot of our cases come from, you have airmen that are, coming from places like California where it's legal and it's not impressing upon them the seriousness nature of how the military views, marijuana. And so I think, a lot of our caseload are discharges or people that get in trouble have to do with that. And that would kind of lighten our caseload. How the Air Force is going to deal with it. Cause we do, and the reasoning behind it, I kind of agree with is, we have a lot of airmen who are mechanics and deal with jet fighter planes. And we can't have them high, like obviously working on the aircraft, right? I mean, because that puts people's lives in jeopardy.
Yeah, safety reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, you know, it's jet fighters are about to go high in the air. Like, why can't I? You know?
Yeah. So, you know, I think we're headed that way federally. I don't know that it'll actually ever be legal in the military. I think it'll probably be more of like a workplace safety kind of thing, or workplace policy, as opposed to a criminal action, which I think is kind of more appropriate. But I do see we're kind of getting to the point where enough states are going to be legalizing it that the feds are going to have to follow suit.
Interesting. Yeah. And then after that, next thing is cocaine.
A lot of other things than just that, man. But Josh, I do want to thank you, man, for what it is that you're doing here in the city of Oceanside, and again for opening up your practice to all these up and coming politicians. But I do really want to go back to your Air Force days, because it seems like the Air Force actually opened up a lot of doors for you and gave you a lot of opportunities, whether it was schooling or just picking up skills in the Air Force itself.
And what president administration was your military?
Don't ask that, bro.
It's actually interesting. I've served under multiple presidents. So obviously after 9/11 it was George W. Bush, right? Yeah. So we had the whole Iraq war and stuff like that. And then I separated in 2008, but that was before Obama was elected. But then, so a little bit, so kind of, we'll kind of go the timeline here.
All right.
Because it'll make more sense. So obviously after high school, 9/11 happened, everyone's patriotic. I was one of those people, went and joined, signed up, no college, no anything. I signed up because I had an interest in law enforcement, so I wanted to be a cop. So I was a cop for the Air Force for 4 years, and just basically you're a cop on base, you do circles.
Yeah, military police.
Military police, that's what it was. And you also do security for like the aircraft and like the nuclear weapons and stuff like that. So it was fun. Had a blast. Met a lot of really cool people. Again, I was stationed in Vegas, so half the time it was fun because when I got there originally, I was only 19. So I couldn't gamble, couldn't drink legally anyway.
Allegedly.
That's how you do it, gentlemen.
Yeah. But yeah, and so met a lot of cool people. So then I got out and I did reserve for 2 years when I was in Colorado doing undergrad, and I was stationed in a base F.E. Warren, Wyoming. I would go up there, a couple times a year to serve and kind of do everything. So then I finally got done. I said, I've kind of had enough. I don't want to do this anymore. So then I kind of just complete break in service. I made it to the rank of senior airman, which is an E4 enlisted. Excuse me. And then I just decided to focus on, have my family and my, bank career, see kind of what's going on, get schooling done, bachelor's degree accomplished, all that's done. So then finally, got back out here to California. We moved to North County in 2018. Finally, because mainly, just on a side note, I didn't realize how much I missed the beach growing up in the Bay Area until I was stationed in Vegas. And I couldn't wait to get back to California. Of course, then I had to go to Colorado, which is even farther from the beach.
Went from the desert to the mountains.
Yeah. And it would have been fun if I had, wasn't working 2 jobs, trying to support the family. I didn't have time to go snowboarding, which I do love. But my wife was on the same page. My kids were all born either in Nevada or Colorado, so they'd never really been to California, and I really wanted them to have that California experience. That was really important to me. So finally made it back in 2011, got our house in North County, and we originally vacationed in Oceanside because again, we're from the Bay Area, and so it's too expensive to move back. I mean, prices are still astronomical. So my wife suggested actually well, how about San Diego? And I was like, well, let me look. So the price is a little more affordable. And this is after the crash had happened. So we could maybe scrounge up some money to get a nice little house. So that's what we did. And so we moved out here, got all settled, and we're going to the beach every weekend. It was fantastic. I had another job at the bank, and I was working 2 jobs, and my wife was working. And so then, I kind of was playing around with the idea of maybe I'll go back Reserve Air Force. I kind of miss the camaraderie. I miss the camaraderie, but I'm not 100% sold on it. I'm like, I don't know, it's a lot of taxing on the family to do that, deployments, this kind of stuff. So I was kind of on the fence. I wasn't 100% sure I was going to do it. So this brings us to about August of 2014. And this is right when the ISIS stuff was happening in Iraq and Syria. and they were taking over large swaths of Iraq and killing people, and it was very difficult for me to go home and watch the news and see these places where I was over there when we first took those areas and liberated them, and to now have these areas fall back into kind of more terrorist control, and see the people we have we went from having women vote and people voting in elections and democracy to them being oppressed again, really hit me pretty hard.
Yeah, that could be rough.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, we sacrificed Marines and Army and Navy personnel and Air Force personnel so they could have that, that right. And now they're falling, and there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just sitting here screaming at the TV. So the next day I called up the recruiter and said, I'm in. I was like, sign me up, let's go. And so I didn't end up being a cop again. I am doing what's called air transportation. And what that is basically just, you have the transport aircrafts, the C-130s, the C-17s, that I'm sure you've seen them on TV where they drop the pallets out of the back and they're just cargo planes. But it was my job to basically just load those and unload those. That's it. So pretty simple. So I ended up doing that 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, for 6 years. And so I did that while I was in law school. And it was always of course, I had to go serve my weekend whenever there was some cool event happening, so it was a sacrifice. But it was very rewarding. So after I graduated law school, I applied to stay reserve, but obviously go as an Air Force attorney because I had the education to do it. And so I got accepted in 2020, I think, and I actually got commissioned as a first lieutenant in 2021. So March 2021 or April, something like that. So then I just put on captain, Air Force captain in October of last year. So, so far I think I have 15 years total in service.
Oh, man. Well, thank you for that, man.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service, Josh, and congratulations on those promotions. Because, it sounds like you're starting off the 2020 decade just right.
I'm definitely trying. It's been quite the journey. And so hopefully, I'm having a good time doing the Air Force attorney gig. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. It's not just criminal prosecution. You deal with everything. So anything imaginable that happens on base, because we're also the civil attorneys for the Air Force. So we have to deal with a lot of civil matters. And what I mean by that is workplace harassment, kind of investigation, stuff like that. Any type of land use issues, environmental law issues that we have to deal with at all. So it's really, really fascinating. So my plan right now, unless I get super tired of it, which I can't foresee right now, I'm just going to keep doing it until they tell me I can't do it anymore. So that's kind of the plan.
Yeah, hell yeah. And so you were mentioning you were a former deputy district attorney. What is the difference between a district attorney and an attorney?
So as far as a deputy district attorney or district attorney is an elected prosecutor for the county or whatever district you're in. And in California, we do it by county. And so you have the San Diego County DA, you have the Orange County DA, Riverside, and so on and so forth. And then underneath them, you have deputies, right? So either assistants or deputies. And the deputies are deputized, kind of like a sheriff is, so you have the same power as the DA underneath him or her.
Did you get a badge like the deputies?
I did have a badge.
Oh, cool.
Yep. I also had a CCW, which is a concealed carry permit for a gun. So that was fun. Definitely felt more safe than I do now. And then all you do is basically you're an attorney that prosecutes the case. You go to jury trial. You convince 12 members of the community that someone's guilty of whatever crime they've been, accused of. And it's kind of a cool system, obviously from our founding, actually from ancient England, the idea of a jury system where you have a lot of power as a prosecutor, but essentially you're left, with just 12 essentially high school educated people that you have to communicate with, right? And you have to be able to communicate effectively. You can't talk legalese to them because they're not going to understand it. They didn't go to law school, so you have to convince them, hey, this guy's guilty and this is why, and here's the evidence. And that's all you do all day, every day is just convince, go to jury trial, convince people that they're guilty or whatever. And like I said, it's a really cool system because even though DAs have immense power, they don't have the power to really ultimately decide someone's fate. That's left specifically to the community, right? Just normal citizens, which I think is great. So,
oh, sorry, man. I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're good.
No, but that was my main question because I know a lot of people out there, and this might sound be dumb, but I know a lot of people out there are thinking the same thing. So a DA is not like an actual judge, right?
No, so
No.
so we have kind of what we talked about when I did the government class. We have the court system, then we have the executive branch, we have the legislature, right? So the DA falls under the executive branch. So as the elected DA, you're like the chief of law enforcement officer of the county. So it's kind of like, think about the sheriff and the DA are kind of the on the same level.
Okay.
Right. And then you have the courts. The courts are in California, you're appointed by the governor or you're independently elected. So you have a completely different role. Right. So the judge, unless some, the defendant chooses to be tried by the judge, which sometimes happens, you have the jury.
Sheriff's right there.
They're always coming for us.
So yeah, you have the judge that kind of just is like the super attorney in the room, and he's kind of the old wise man or the old wise woman that kind of knows the law, has been practicing. You have to be practicing attorney for at least 10 years minimum to be a judge. Oftentimes it's probably 20 or more years, and they're very at least in theory, they're supposed to be seasoned and understand the law, and they're supposed to be impartial. That's why they wear black, right?
No color, no.
Yeah, there's they're not supposed to have any expression.
Oh, that makes sense.
Not have to have bias or anything. They're just there to make sure everything's run fairly and smoothly, right? Now, as the DA, that's not my job. My job is to like zealously, prosecute the case and protect the victim, right? Yeah. Whereas the defense attorney, same side, different, or same coin, different side, right? Now he or she has to defend the client, right? So he has to make sure not only is he or she getting a fair trial, but they have to advocate for them. We have to make the prosecution prove the case. So the defense attorney holds me to account to make sure I prove the case. Right? And then the judge kind of oversees and makes sure everyone's playing fair and stuff like that. Now, once the jury returns the verdict, let's say guilty, then the judge steps in and he's the star of the show, because then the judge does the sentencing. And the judge will sentence whatever appropriate, depending on what arguments are made by the different opposing counsel. So that's really the role of the judge up until that point is really just the peacekeeper and just kind of the referee, and just kind of listen, make sure everything's going smoothly. Maybe offer some advice to different attorneys along the way. But once we get to the guilty verdict, that's when the judge kind of takes over. And okay, we're putting you, we're either giving you community service, we're gonna, do something else, we're gonna send you to prison, so on and so forth. So that's how it kind of works.
Interesting. And I've seen it on TV of, different attorneys and lawyers dressing up all flamboyant. Mm-hmm. Is that it? Is that an actual thing that happens?
Absolutely. And, depending on I think people's personality dictates their costumes. Okay. And that's really what it is. Because court really is really Broadway, right? It's just, you're putting on a show.
You're like, all right, I'm on stage right now. Yeah.
You are. And, I definitely, depending on the situation, I don't always dress very like super, super wonderful. But like when I am in trial, like I put on my best suit. I have, different ties that I wear for trial specifically, because I realize that, all eyes are on you. Right. Mm-hmm. Well, but if you're just doing like the normal day-to-day court stuff, or it's you and the judge and, just the court staff, you can just kind of dress down a little bit.
I'd be kind of worried if my attorney just came in wearing sweatpants,
That's how you would have wanted him to be, huh?
Oh, man. In that case, I don't know if I do, man.
That was in your budget,
huh? You're losing that case for sure.
I rest my case.
What is one of the favorite cases that you have taken on?
I would say probably, I don't know if I would call it my favorite, but the one that really stands out to me was one of the more serious felony cases that I had to prosecute. And how it worked in where I was working is it's a smaller county up in Northern California. And, we have limited staff up there. And so generally speaking, if you're starting off in the misdemeanor unit, I did the misdemeanors for about a year. And if the DA thinks you're ready, like he'll start assigning you felony cases, lower level felonies. Mm-hmm. And one way to get a felony assignment is if one of your misdemeanor criminal people commits a felony, right? Obviously if they do a murder or a rape or something like that, that doesn't matter what they do. It's going to go to a more experienced prosecutor, mm-hmm. right? But if they do something, that is in line with what you're already kind of dealing with, you can just, the DA will call you and say, hey, are you comfortable doing the next level? And of course, I was like, absolutely, give it to me. I love it because I want to learn. I want to like get my experience up. So this particular case, are you guys familiar with? And I didn't know what this was until I read the police report. It's like the Apple like tracking thing for your keys.
Like the Apple tag.
Yeah. So, and I didn't even know that thing existed until I started reading this police report. What this guy did is we had a boyfriend, girlfriend, they had a bad breakup, right? So he would start texting her randomly saying, hey, why are you at this address?
Oh, damn.
And she's like, and she would like go to Sacramento, like she had to drop her mom off at the airport, for example. And he's like, why are you at this hotel in Sacramento? Blah, 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 And she's like freaking out. She's like, what is going on? How does he know that I'm here?
Psychic.
Yeah. And then, a couple of weeks go by and she's at a friend's house, like, in like a different county. Why are you at this address? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, this is just super weird.
And it's creepy, weird.
Yeah. So apparently what he had done is he had stuck one of those Apple trackers in her rearview mirror. And she only found it by coincidence because she heard like it rattling. And she's like, what is this? And like she pulled it out and she's like, oh my God, he's been tracking me for, like months or whatever. So then she, filed a police report. That's a misdemeanor. You can't do that. So I get the case. I'm reading it. It's kind of disturbing. So we get a protective order in place. And what that is the judge basically signs a piece of paper saying, hey, you can't have any contact with this person. This person is now under the protection of the court. So you can't contact without our permission. Right. So
it's kind of like know as a restraining order.
Yeah. So a restraining order is a civil version of that. So a protective order for a criminal protective order is one issued by the judge and like, more of a criminal kind of focus.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, with that in place, he continues to contact her, right, which is additional misdemeanors. So then it continues to escalate to the point where I get a call from one of the police officers that I've been dealing with this particular case. And he says, hey, like, I'm over here, like, he basically made a threat to kill her, which, if you understand the elements of stalking, that's one of the elements you need, right? Is you have to have a credible threat to somebody's life. So that kind of made the stalking charge the more felony version. So we basically put things in place to get her protected, get him arrested, get him into jail. Excuse me. And anyway, so I wish that's where it ended. Unfortunately, it didn't. So, she is at home now, safe. He's now in jail. And then, he gets admonished by the court. And what that means, he gets yelled at by the judge. Judge is like, I told you not to contact this person. Now you're going to sit in jail till your trial, this and that. So even after being told by the judge, and he's sitting in jail because he's contacting this girl from jail, he calls her an additional 485 times.
Oh my God.
400.
Wow.
Yeah. Almost 500.
Wow.
So luckily for us, the jail calls are always monitored. There's another legal advice for all your listeners. If you ever get put in jail, do not talk about your case no matter what over the jail phones because they're all recorded.
Yeah, they have Apple tracks on there too.
Yeah. and additionally, another tidbit I just thought of, don't talk to anybody. If you're in jail, don't talk to anybody about your case. Because another way, let's say you did invoke your right to an attorney and they stick you in jail. One way they get around that, because they're not allowed to talk to you anymore, is they can put an informant in your cell and you can start bragging about your crime you just did. And now that's not, that's not protected. Mm-hmm. So now they can use that testimony against you.
Damn.
Right. So it's better to, when they say remain silent, it's better to do that.
Just remain silent.
Remain silent, guys.
Find yourself in those situations. Just ask for an attorney. Don't say nothing.
Yep.
Nothing.
Yeah. So anyway, getting back to the story, realizing all these are recorded, out of the 485 calls that he made, 19 actually connected where they had a conversation. Out of those 19 calls, I had to listen to all of them. It was like a soap opera. And
that is popcorn and everything.
I almost was sad when all the calls were in it because I was like, well, I want to know what happens next. You
got to find out on the next episode.
Yeah. Anyway, so out of the 19 calls I had to listen to, 3 of them, he actually attempted to dissuade her from testifying.
Oh.
So that's the court considers that very serious, right? And very highly punished under the law. And so much, in fact, that those are what's called strike felonies. in which if you get 3 strikes, you're gone for life. So
Bless you.
he did that 3 times. Now you can't use how the
Thank you.
law is been adjusted. It would only be 1 strike if I was to get him on all 3 of those, the equivalent of 1 strike. But it's a very serious thing that I got him on. So basically, I used that to kind of leverage him into getting a plea deal, because it was on tape. What So I dropped because he was looking at probably 19 years for if I had charged him with everything. But I ended up doing a negotiated deal in which he would go to 4 years instead of 19. He just pleaded just to the stalking charge. And then she gets a 10-year protective order, and she's safe. So I feel pretty good about that.
That's right.
But that's a case where I felt really, really good about making a good impact in the victim's life. So because I truly believe he probably would have killed her.
Shit.
Wow, that's really tough, especially when you kind of have the evidence behind it to like back it up and
Mhm.
plead your case. Wow, the extent to what people would actually go to. Insane.
It really just I bet you see it all the time. Are you surprised about what people are capable of in this line of work?
Honestly, like you always think to yourself, like, I've seen it all. You haven't seen it all. Like
Mhm.
there's always something else that somebody else comes up with. You're like, wow, like that, I never thought of that.
Right. It's just one of those things that doesn't get any easier.
Yeah. And honestly, like I'm not really good at thinking like a criminal. I guess that's a good thing. But it's just, you see some of these things and you're just like, wow, like how'd they come up with that? And like we have to prosecute it. A lot of stuff that really I have trouble dealing with is a lot of the kid crimes. I tried to stay away from those, mainly because I have kids of my own. And it's not really something I'm really like passionate about. There are, I think good prosecutors out there that are really, passionate about the kids and like want to protect them. But anytime I have to do with like, sexual assault and children, I usually try to stay away from that kind of stuff. Mainly because, the sensitive nature of it all. But yeah, my wheelhouse was obviously like DUIs, misdemeanors, and then like a lot of like domestic violence stuff. So that's where I made the most impact.
Oh, well, there you go. Is there any way people could contact you in case they want to actually get you further in your service?
You can shoot me an email. So it's first name Josh and then D for my middle initial. D is in Daniel. So Josh D and then Raines, RAINES @gmail.com. So, and then if I can't actually help you, I know a ton of attorneys that can. So that's one of the cool things I did in law school that I did differently than undergrad is number one, I networked way more. So I knew everybody. Because I figured, hey, like it's always good to know an attorney that does everything, right? So if I don't know them, it's going to be a weird case. And then I did a lot more internships in law school too. But yeah, so if I can't help you with whatever legal issue you have, I'll find somebody who can. So.
And earlier you were saying how now you work more with small businesses. A similar question to earlier about certain things that people might not know, but they find themselves having to need an attorney or a lawyer. What are some of those things that, so for example, someone with a small business might need to know, or basic questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So any type of, it doesn't have to be a small business, any size business really. But if you think about, like, for example, like premise liability, and what that means is, let's say you have a customer comes in and we're all familiar with the slip and fall. You have like maybe a wet floor or a leak or something, like they slip on the floor. Like, now am I going to get sued? Like, so, we can kind of like defend against those type of lawsuits and like maybe get them settled or make them go away, that kind of thing. So that's a good example of like when you have to worry about like, am I getting sued? Like, or, a former employee is like unhappy, got terminated, he or she got terminated. We can help out with that kind of stuff too. So.
And we have a couple comments on Instagram and over here. Yeah, we got the Torres joining us today. Jose Torres saying, "Sup guys, saludos." Oside Lens,
what up, Jose?
What's up, man? Oside Lens is saying, "What's your opinion on the train wreck and mess in Ohio?"
Whoa.
That's a pretty good one. Honestly, it's a very unfortunate event. I think there was another train wreck, if I'm not mistaken, just a few days ago in Ohio. But it kind of just goes to show generally about the failing infrastructure we have. And it kind of, not to get too into politics, but it kind of infuriates me a little bit when we're sending these millions of dollars to Ukraine, right? And we're having train wrecks here in Ohio, like because our infrastructure, is faulty. We have bridges collapsing, this kind of thing. So I would like, if we're going to spend money, we should spend money on
Here,
us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that makes more sense.
Here at home,
Hey,
yes.
put the oxygen mask on first before you try to help other people.
Exactly.
I agree 100%.
And that's actually one of the top arguments that some people will bring up about the states stepping in and giving Ukraine a relief on the coming war.
Even besides
Like
that,
the
dude,
ongoing
I
war.
think we kind of see it, especially here in San Diego after this rains, because now the potholes are coming up and all that stuff. Like, that's still infrastructure, dude. That still goes to the city officials, and it takes time for them to go out there and patch it up. And it's unfortunate that sometimes it gets delayed because they don't have the funding. But they'll get to it when they get to it, I guess.
In the system that's put in place.
At the moment, yes.
Yeah.
I mean that's why Tony Hawk was kind of in favor of maybe not pursuing with like the what was it, the Charger Stadium, when they were still trying to stay in town or whatnot, because
Yeah.
he would have rather see the tax money go into better developments here in the city, bettering our roads, and which is really needed. Like I'm happy to see that the 5 is almost finally complete, and that we're gonna get a couple extra lanes here in North County, dude, because it's been much needed. That 5 freeway, it's horrible traffic if you catch it at the right time of day.
Yeah, and as someone that has worked closely with some of the politicians on the local level, and from your experience, what would be some of the things that you would concentrate on?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's obviously, as planning commissioner, I've thought a lot about different things. But what originally attracted me to Oceanside in the first place, right, was I love the beach. And one thing I've kind of noticed over the years is, like, I don't know if you guys know, the South Oceanside beach is kind of eroding. So I think that should be a top priority. I mean, I would have to look at the numbers, but I can imagine we probably generate a lot of revenue to fix our roads and stuff like that from tourism, right? So if we had pristine beaches like Newport or Laguna, or even Mission Bay, we would attract more people to spend money. More people vacation here. That's more money going in to fix our roads and our infrastructure. So I think that should be a top priority. Secondly, I think we talked about the 5. I'm super excited to see the 5 expanded too. I would be careful about, there's this kind of movement to kind of reduce the lanes to make room for bikes, and I don't really have a bad opinion of bikes, but my issue with kind of narrowing the lanes to make room for bikes is I would do the opposite. I would say, like, why don't we just expand the lanes and make room for cars and bikes, right? Rather than trying to, take one from the other. The other issue is, like, I feel it's kind of like almost fraudulent in a way. And what I mean by that is that, we all here probably have cars. We all pay the gas tax, right? And, that money is supposed to be going into roads for cars because we're paying the tax. There is no equivalent tax for a bicycle, right? So they're getting a benefit they're not paying for. Right now, I'm not suggesting we should start a new bike tax or anything, but I'm just, like, trying to get people to think about, like, well, we're spending money to redesign the roads using money that our cars are paying for, right? So it seems a little interesting to me. So I would maybe move that around. As far as local issues, like, I have chickens in my backyard, and I think, like, for example, Oceanside has an ordinance restricting the amount of chickens to 6, I think. So I would like to see maybe that number increased, especially during the.
Just like the marijuana.
Yeah, I
plants.
heard the city of Escondido allows you to have 20
That's great.
hens.
Yeah, I believe Escondido. I believe it.
Yeah, but it has to be, I think, 30 feet away from your home, and same from your neighbor's home.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's a couple of little things involved.
Yeah, but I think, for example, I like that rule. At least it takes into account people that have bigger yards. Like, for example, I have a bigger yard, so I don't fall into this 6 minimum thing. So I think, especially during this egg crisis that's going on, like, why not 12 chickens, or why not 15? Like, why not get it up so people can actually start being more self-sufficient.
Dude, how relieved were you when you realized there was an egg crisis? You're like, oh man, I'm so glad I have those chickens in the backyard.
It's so amazing. I'll tell you.
How many neighbors did you get in your front door? Be like, can I have a couple of eggs, sir?
Oh yeah, no, we're friendly with all the neighbors. We give away eggs all the time, especially during the summer. It's a little bit more less now because it's wintertime and they're molting and stuff. But during the summer, we were giving away pallets of eggs. Because I'm really the only one that eats eggs. Me and my son. My wife really doesn't care for them, and my daughter doesn't like them. So, and they're producing 6 a day or whatever, so that one each, right? And so, that piles up, especially if you stop eating a couple days, take a break from eggs, then they pile.
You're all piled up.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, so it's been really nice to just not have to worry about, actually, a couple weeks ago, I was over at Trader Joe's. And I saw a fight break out over the last carton of eggs.
Whoa!
Wow.
So it was nice to not have to worry about it.
So who took the carton?
It was actually it was two guys, and I guess they both reached for it at the same time, and they got into a screaming match. And I didn't know who actually won. I got I think I had to pick up a bottle of wine or something, and I got in and got out. But
that's funny.
They have classic.
Yeah, I do have one last question, Josh, and this is gonna be just from your hometown feel, and that is the Bay. So how did you feel when you left the Bay and then came out to here in San Diego, Southern California? How was that adjustment for you? And what do you think? Do you like it here better than the Bay now, or would you still want to just go back up?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because hey, I'm kind of in a unique position where as soon as I was the baby of the family, so as soon as I moved out, my parents sold the house, and they're like, we're gone, we're cashing in on the Bay Area real estate, and we're going to go motorhome, right? And see the country, which is great. They were close to retirement age. My mom had me when she was in her 40s, so they were ready to retire. They're ready to be done. So then I kind of got stuck, where I can't ever go home again. So the Bay Area is always going to have a very soft place in my heart. I miss growing up in the Bay Area. Do I miss the traffic? No, not at all. And then also seeing just how the Bay Area is kind of because I've been up there visiting several times, how it's just kind of morphed and it's not home anymore. You know what I mean? It's it's changed. It's constantly developing and getting it's just it's not like going back. My parents are originally from Indiana. And so, you go back to Indiana, then nothing's changed. It's just the same that it's always been. It's not that way in the Bay Area. I can go back and see my old house, but, they remodeled it and it's not the same anymore. So, I'm just going to have to live with those memories. But to answer your question, transitioning. So, I went from Vegas to Colorado and then finally back to here. So I think I cried when I got back here.
I'm just glad to be back at the beach, man. Right? Tired of mountains in the desert out
Tears
here.
of joy. I hope.
Tears of joy, 100%. And I'll tell you, even going kind of weighing had I had the opportunity to go back to the Bay Area, I think I had realized during that transformation, how much I missed the beach. I'm not sure I would have actually ended up being happy in the Bay Area. With as much as I really love the beach, and we didn't really get into this, but I also have my sailing certification, so I can sail off the coast. I think this is the place for me. So I have no regrets.
Sailing and kayaking.
I love kayaking. Yeah,
that's what I've heard.
Yep. I just recently got my advanced sailing certification through the Camp Pendleton Marina. So that was really fun.
Hey.
So, but perhaps a conversation for another time.
Yeah.
So.
I'm just gonna power through these comments that we have on Instagram. We have Jesse Gray Barton saying this is really interesting. Shout out to everybody watching. By the way,
shout out to everybody watching, everybody commenting.
S6e10 saying definitely rewatching this episode. Jesse Gray Barton is laughing at the crash dummy questions comments.
I got him.
Women Workout Wear, who is also one of our sponsors. Shout out. Great show tonight, guys, as per usual. Extra 760 saying I love watching Drop Dead Diva.
Talk about reality shows, remember?
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
we
All right, good.
We
good,
did
good.
When you're out
touch
there
on reality
campaigning,
shows.
what will people rather pay attention to?
Mercedes in SD saying, did we talk about death row and life without possibility of parole? And she's also, so is this the attorney from San Diego? And does he work out of Summer Stevens' office? So yeah.
Okay, death parole in California. I know it was in the ballot a couple of years ago about not having the 3-strike rule. So, but I'm not sure if it passed or not. I don't remember that much.
I'm pretty sure that one failed.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think all the governors, past and present, came out against it, and I think swayed public opinion against that. And as far as the death penalty goes, I'm not opposed to the death penalty as a concept. I think we do it horribly in this modern day and age, and I think there are obviously certain circumstances that are so egregious that warrant such a penalty.
Right.
I think if you're talking about, I can list numerous examples, especially when people confess to it, or they're caught like with DNA evidence like that is irrefutable. I mean, come on, like there are certain consequences that need to happen for certain crimes. Now, should that bar be very high? Absolutely, because obviously we don't want to make a mistake, right?
Right. It should be like at the highest of
correct.
like crimes.
Should be punishment fit. The punishment fits the crime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then as far as life without parole, I mean, that's along the same lines. For like maybe the next level down. I think there are unimaginable crimes and people out there that do horrendous things that would warrant such a sentence. But again, I think those things should be very narrowly tailored to specific circumstances. It shouldn't be a blanket rule.
100%. Any more comments out there, Louis?
Nah, man, that's it. Lovely laugh slash is saying it did not pass, referring to what was it, the life without possibility of parole or
the death row?
Death row, sorry, yeah. And that's all the comments we have.
Cool.
I'm great with that you powered house right through them, bro.
Yeah, man. Cool. No, it's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, and Josh, people were really excited to tune in for tonight on your episode, man.
Well, I'm glad I was able to bring some value. I was kind of like worried. I was like, I hope I have some stuff to say.
It's cool, man. It's always cool getting to see that side of of things and give people a little bit of insight into that most people don't really have much knowledge about.
Absolutely, yeah. And anytime you want me to come back, I'm more than happy to do so, and we can come up with some other legal stuff to talk about. But,
yeah, for sure.
Generally, I just like helping people. I like helping the community. So. Even though I'm literally this whole episode I've been arguing against my own self-interest because again I'm a criminal prosecutor at heart.
Yeah.
But
this man has been objecting himself.
Yeah, but ultimately, like we had my DA. And to answer the one question, I know I didn't work for Summer Stephan. My county was north of San Francisco. So, but yeah, so but the DA I worked for always had a saying. He said, at the end of the day. It's not about winning and losing. It's about wearing the white hat. And that means we need to fight for justice, right? So if we come across, a victim who's lying, we need to make sure that, that case gets buried, right? Not buried, that's the wrong word, but dismissed, right? So if we come across basically somebody who is factually innocent, we need to stop the prosecution and do the right thing, right? It's not about winning. So our version of winning is making sure justice is done, right? So if that means, so a lot of times that means there's not enough. We know this person is probably guilty. We can't prove it, so we're not gonna mess with it, right? So I would say overall, I had to dismiss more cases where the guy or girl was probably guilty. I just couldn't prove the case, but I'm going to do the right thing and let justice take care of it, right? So rather than try to thread the line or do something questionable, you always wear the white hat. So
yeah,
yes, sir. And I mean that's the beauty of having the privilege to live here in the USA. You get the opportunity to actually go into trial and prove your case and see where it kind of takes you.
A fair and speedy trial.
Yes, sir.
With these COVID restrictions. Isn't that right? That's how it got adapted. I mean, we also gotta be considerate and also acknowledge that some people do work the system. There are people out there that not even, I wouldn't even consider people. I would just consider them monsters, really.
Yeah.
As we're all animals, humans are animals themselves. So those are just real savages that do deserve to be away from society, to be confined in those walls and take the punishment that was bestowed upon them for the crimes that they committed, honestly. But like I said, the system is flawed. So of course, like people are going to slip through the cracks. Some people are, of course, that are innocent are going to find themselves in a situation that's going to be too hard for them to get out of. And I do appreciate people like Josh right over here taking notice of that, and also applying being human and using logic sense to go about on their work, because that should be applied more than just in the personal agenda. That should be applied more than just a number for your statistics on your prosecutions or your wins or your losses. That should be more on the courts themselves, to which most of them actually do recognize that this is a broken system at times, and we're just trying to pick it up and work through it day by day.
That's how it is, man. Day by day, one day at a time. Try to see what's best.
Yes, sir. I do apologize for the rambling.
It was amazing.
You
It was
gotta say what
perfect.
you say. All right, last set of comments, and then we're gonna give a shout out to sponsors, and then we're gonna get out of here
All
because
right.
Mr. Ramsey is a busy man. So lovely last lashes is because of that circumstance. I don't remember exactly what she's talking about. Michael Gabriel saying allegedly.
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 Lovely
Shout
last,
out.
lovely last lashes saying that's great because she's trash. I think she's referring to Summer Steffens. Personal opinion, and see, and it's all the system's not always fair, but yeah, I guess so. And then Michael Gabriel saying, "Damn, Bruce is smart." Hey, he'll surprise you sometimes, man.
He surprises everybody in the podcast all the time, dude.
And then like the next sentence is just like, "Well, there it is." Yeah.
He surprises everybody in the
Yeah,
podcast all
and
the
that's
time.
what you got me for.
Oh, man.
Hey, Louis, all you gave me was a peanut butter sandwich. The most you get is one ramble.
Egyptian, he had an option to have honey on his sandwich as well.
That's true. But peanut
You
butter
just confess,
is
bro.
a
You
chewy.
don't do that. You don't say that's true. You just say
Yeah, you got to get your
you
attorney
say
dog.
nothing.
You
What?
need your attorney dog, man.
You never at one point says I was under citizen arrest.
But thank you so much for being here with us. We greatly appreciate you
Of
taking
course.
time and giving us dropping a little bit of knowledge on us like that.
I hope you had a good time, Josh.
Yeah,
I do.
It was very nice.
Yeah, and the audience loved it, of course. I don't see why we won't have you as a recurring
Yeah,
guest. this
you're
season.
always welcome. Have you done anything like this before?
This is my first ever podcast.
Nice.
Got another one.
One more time, can you tell people how they could get in contact with you?
Sure. The best contact is my email address. So it's Josh, JOSHD as in Daniel, and then Reigns at gmail.com.
There you go. So go ahead, hit him up, and if you need help, if he is not the right person to help you, he will guide you in the correct direction for you to be able to get that assistance. One time, a shout out to our sponsors.
Yes, sir. Well, first off, I want to thank Josh Reigns for being here with us and sticking through the whole entire episode, just like everybody on the YouTube, on the Spotify, on the IG, and wherever you tune in from. If you made it this far into the episode, much appreciated. But of course, shout out to all the sponsors, starting off on the Coast Highway with Old School Saturdays on Old Side Sports Bar and Grill. You know where they're at on Coast Highway.
And this Saturday is going to be special because DJ Addict 1 is going to be spinning.
Yes, sir. So you don't want to miss it. It's going to be a party down there with or without rain. You got to pull up and check out them super, super sick lowriders out there. And then we're going to keep on cruising down to the Oceanside Boulevard. And we're going to stop by, of course, to Street Knowledge Hydraulics for all your car needs. Stop by Street Knowledge Hydraulics, Oceanside Boulevard and Crouch Street. Then moving along to Urban Water supplying all the hydration here in the city, followed by the Draft Restaurant, also on Oceanside Boulevard, followed by OAW, Oceanside Ale Works, still on Oceanside Boulevard, or near Oceanside Boulevard, I should say, 1-800 Ordway.
Open on Thursdays to Sundays.
Yep, and right up the street from that, we got the Draft.
And then we also got Natalie's Fashion at 270 Vista Village Drive, right across the street from Caliche Town. She always got the latest fashion in stock for you.
Yep, and then bust a U-turn, go to Full Metal Burgers on Black Plague Brewing.
Yep, at Oceanside and Escondido locations.
Yep.
With Esco having fries.
Yep.
And just like that, make sure that you grab yourself a Cali Blunt. Make sure to tune in to Michael Gabriel when he comes back on. And thank you for kicking it.
Hell yeah. And one more thing. Women workout wear. Contact them right there on Instagram. cop some gear for your girls.
Yep.
Yeah, or for your women.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
okay.
with that, we are now at the end of the episode. One more time, thank you so much for taking some time to come down and kick it with us. Bruce, would you mind?
Hell yeah. Until then, you can catch us next time around. Thank you for sipping up with us. Thank you for toking up with us. Thank you for kicking it.